Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Shaylee with Align Life here in Sugar Hill. With the holiday season approaching, we wanted to take the time to shed some light on the impact that stress can actually have on your nervous system and how you can become more resilient to that holiday stress through chiropractic care. Some of the common causes of stress during the holiday season, there you have that stress all year round, but for some reason it gets amplified this time of year. You have financial strain, overcommitment with tons of events, family dynamics, changes in your routines and your kids' routines. But as chiropractors, we know that stress can show up in different ways inside your body. It can show up physically, emotionally, behaviorally, even cognitively. I get a ton of brain fog around the holidays. So, to better understand how to not let this stress during the holiday season impact you long term, we want to help you better understand the neurology and how that stress impacts your brain and your body and how that impacts how you function in your day to day. So let's dive into what some of those typical holiday stressors look like and how we can help you prevent that from affecting you the rest of the year. To begin, we're going to dive into emotional stressors. First on our list are family dynamics. Interactions with family members can be a significant source of stress, especially if there are unresolved conflicts or challenging relationships that you can't avoid during the holiday season. Next is loneliness or isolation. For some, the holidays can amplify feelings of isolation and loneliness, especially if they are away from family or have lost loved ones, or maybe this is the first time that they've had to go through a holiday season without having someone by their side. The third is financial pressure. The cost of gifts, traveling, entertainment, it can lead to a lot of financial stress and strain, which can even tie in with causing strain in some of those family relationships that you have. Next is social expectations and definitely overcommitting ourselves. The pressure to always be at social gatherings and also maintain traditions that sometimes wear you out or meet others' expectations can be overwhelming and cause more strain and stress than enjoyment at the end of the day. Last on our list for emotional stress is SAD, which stands for seasonal affect disorder. This is shorter daylight hours due to the time change and colder weather, which can contribute to feeling depressed, mood swings, irritability, issues emotionally, all due to the time change and getting darker earlier. One other thing I wanted to mention about seasonal affect disorder is that it's a mental health condition that is triggered by the change of seasons, which we talked about earlier. But this is actually a subtype of major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder, which major depressive disorder is characterized by prolonged sadness and um, lack of motivation, while bipolar disorder is characterized by depressive episodes. So, either way, both of these mental health diagnoses are at high risk for developing seasonal affect disorder during those colder and darker winter months. So, next on our list, guys, are chemical stressors. I don't know about y'all, but during the holidays, I have a ton of temptation to not only stay out later and mess up my schedule, but to drink a lot more caffeine. There's a lot of parties with alcohol that is available. I eat a lot more sugar, and I'm sure you guys can relate that we just overall have unhealthy eating habits that are more likely to occur during the holidays. There's tons of cookies everywhere. Everyone's eating lots of carbs, which we love, but in moderation. So during the holiday season, we are just more prone to have things that are outside our normal routine of eating and just have a lot more exposure to chemical stressors in our day to day. So, we've already talked about emotional stressors, we've talked about the chemical stressors, but what about the physical stressors? I'm going to start with travel fatigue because I am a northern girl now living in the south. So we travel every holiday to be with our family in the north, which we love and cherish that time. But it does take a toll on your body. It Does not matter if you're flying, if you're driving, either way, when you travel, it impacts your circadian rhythm, it impacts your day to day schedule, which again, we're talking a ton about routines, and it also transitions into you having less sleep or disrupted sleep and routines. This leads to overexertion, not just from traveling, but also whenever you get to where you're going, or if people are traveling to you and you're hosting, you're cleaning, you're cooking, you're shopping, and anytime you guys have ever hosted an event, at least me personally, I'm exhausted because you have the lead up where you're not sleeping and you're overworking, and then during the event, you're you're hosting and you're entertaining and you're being present, and then afterwards you're cleaning up and trying to get everything back to normal. And then on top of all of that, it's cold outside. So, like I said, I'm from the north, but in the south down here, it does get cold as well, and it limits your outdoor activities. You're less likely to go out for a walk or a run and move your body after you overindulge on a ton of cookies in the winter when it's cold than in the summertime. So, these are some physical stressors that impact our bodies and put them under an increased amount of stress during the holiday season, and something we want to try to limit and possibly avoid affecting us into the next year. So, now that we've talked about the three different types of stressors that our body undergoes every single day, but that's amplified typically during the holiday season, when we experience these stresses, whether it's emotional, physical, chemical, or some combination, our body undergoes numerous neurological and physiological processes. And we're going to dive into the neurology that impacts our body from those types of stressors that we experience during the holiday season and every single day. The first thing we're going to dive into is amygdala activation. So, the immediate response to stress begins in a very important part of our brain called the amygdala. So, if you look at the image here on the slide, the amygdala is a small almond shaped region in the brain, and it plays a central role in processing emotions, and it picks up and detects potential threats in our environment. So, think of the amygdala as your brain's alarm system. So, when we encounter a stressor in our day to day, the amygdala quickly assesses the situation and it determines if it's a threatening situation or if it's a safe situation and we don't have to worry. So, the amygdala is the first step in the stress response system. And after the amygdala encounters a stressful situation, it then pushes over essentially the first domino to then trigger the next cascade effect. So, the hypothalamus response is second on our body's list of systems to engage, essentially. So, when the amygdala perceives a threat, it sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus, which is a key regulatory center in the brain. So, the hypothalamus is responsible for helping to regulate things like your body temperature. It acts as the command center that communicates with the rest of your body. It essentially helps orchestrate the stress response physically. To do this, our hypothalamus triggers a response for our endocrine system to go ahead and allow certain glands in our body, like our anterior pituitary gland and our adrenal glands, to release certain hormones that essentially will help us get out of the bad situation and get to safety as quickly and effectively as possible. Along with triggering the endocrine system response, which releases those hormones into your body, your hypothalamus is also responsible for activation of the autonomic nervous system. This is known as your ANS, and the ANS is the master control system, and it's responsible for controlling involuntary bodily functions such as your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breathing. These are things that we don't have to think about, so they're occurring involuntarily. The ANS has two branches that include the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, and then the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. So, our bodies are naturally designed for us to be in balance of both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. But during a stress response, that balance is temporarily shifted in favor of the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. So, the sympathetic nervous system is activated during stress and it triggers the fight or flight response. This response prepares the body to either confront the perceived threat, so a bear in the woods, or flee from it. Me personally, I would be fleeing. But the key effect of the sympathetic activation includes increasing your heart rate, dilating your airways, and increasing your blood flow to the muscles. It also then releases glucose into your bloodstream to provide us with prolonged energy in that moment to get you out of that situation. But once our brain detects that the threat has passed, so you're safe, the hypothalamus then signals back to the endocrine system and tells it to stop the production of those stress hormones and to get your body back to homeostasis. So you can get back into that parasympathetic nervous system and you can rest and digest and relax and recover. But what if we never get back to that state in which we can recover? What if we're stuck in that fight or flight response? That's where something called sympathetic dominance comes into play. So when you're stuck in that fight or flight response, and it's important to say that this is supposed to be a quick and adaptive state that you're in when you're in a sympathetic state. You're supposed to acknowledge that there's a bear in the woods and you need to get away from that situation. You get away from the situation quickly, and then you're able to relax and recover. But during the holiday season, I know we're not being chased by bears. I hope not. But we have a ton of work related stress, people problems, family problems. You're coming up on the fourth quarter of your year at work. We have tons of financial strain. We have gift giving. We have travel. We have poor diet and bad routines, and all of our normal daily living activities are halted. We're also eating a lot of sugar and having reduced physical activity. So our body is stuck in this negative cycle, and our body perceives it, or our brain perceives it, as a threat to our normal daily functioning. So this is where during the holiday season, people get stuck in that sympathetic dominant response, and they can't get their body back to that relaxation in that recovery period, which is really what the holidays are supposed to do. So the question is, what happens when we're stuck in a sympathetic dominant state for a long period of time? So sympathetic dominance can have a negative effect on our overall well-being, such as cardiovascularly, metabolically, on your immune system, your digestive system, mental health, and your cognitive functioning. So how could this affect you cardiovascularly? So when you're stuck in a sympathetic dominant state, it increases your heart rate, it elevates your blood sugar, and it changes your blood vessel tone, which can actually contribute to cardiovascular problems over time. Metabolically, this sustained sympathetic activation can affect metabolism, and it also can lead to an increased blood sugar level and insulin resistance. Your immune system is suppressed whenever you're running from a bear in the woods because your body's not concerned with fighting off a virus in that moment. Its long-term sympathetic dominance may suppress the immune system, making individuals more susceptible to infectious diseases and illnesses long-term. Digestive issues during a sympathetic dominant state occur because chronic stress impacts your digestion. When you're running from that bear, you are not focused on digesting the banana you just ate. This can lead to constipation, irritable bowel syndrome, and other gastrointestinal problems long term. Your mental health is impacted because of prolonged sympathetic dominance is associated with the increased risk of anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Cognitive functioning, I talked earlier about brain fog. Cognitive function is decreased when we're under a sympathetic dominant state. Stress signals our limbic system, and this then turns off our rational and logical thinking part of our brain. This can lead to challenges with focusing on tasks and decision making, basically brain-body miscommunication. I'm sure all of y'all can agree that if you've ever been under a lot of stress, you don't make the most logical decisions in those really, really stressful times. And that's okay. You're not supposed to in those moments. When your body is in a state of fight or flight, you need to just use all of your energy to get out of that situation, which is why it's supposed to be for a short period of time, and that we're supposed to then return back to that parasympathetic state and rest and digest and recover. So, how can chiropractic care help? As we approach the holiday season, it's important to recognize the impact that stress has on our nervous system and our overall well being. Emotional, chemical, and physical stressors, ranging from family dynamics to dietary choices to staying up too late at parties, these can all collectively influence our nervous system. And now, understanding the neurology of stress reveals how our brain responds to these pressures. So, the holiday months can bring us into a prolonged state of stress, which gets us in that stuck state of sympathetic dominance. And this can lead to a cascade of health concerns impacting your immunity, your digestion, mental health, and even your cognitive functioning throughout the rest of the year. So the challenge lies in you ensuring that your body is able to return to that rest and digest, that parasympathetic state. We have to recover after being in a stressed out state, or your body will break down. So, consistent chiropractic care, what we do is we provide a pathway to help restore balance and regulate your stress response, and also to enhance your resilience and boost your immune system. So, as we embark on this season, I really encourage you to prioritize your well being and get your nervous system checked so that your body can be balanced and healthy as we enter the new year. So, thank you all for listening. Please do not hesitate to reach out at all with any questions. And I hope you and your families have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.